Well, it's been the most famous form of space travel over the last 20 years, but the days of the space shuttle are now numbered.
On the 3rd of December, the second last space shuttle will take off for the International Space Station, and next year the shuttle programme will be scrapped and the Russians will be transporting US astronauts to their billion-dollar home in space. And here to tell us more is Astronomy Ireland's David Moore. So what is all this? So the Americans are going to be hitching a ride with the Russians?
Yeah, it's going to be very embarrassing for the Americans by the end of next year when they have to rely on a foreign country to get them up to a space station. Yeah, which they've mostly funded themselves. I mean, the Russians and the Americans are two main partners. And then, of course, there's over a dozen other countries that have contributed to the International Space Station. But they won't be able to put men in or women in space any other way than via the Russians.
Well, you've described the space shuttle as a truck and the Russian ones as taxis.
Yeah, the Russians have a Soyuz craft, which is a very reliable old design that's been able to get people up and down to the space station. And it'll take 3 passengers, one of whom can actually be a commercial paying passenger, and 6 people have paid $20 million to do this for about 10 days in space. Yeah, apparently there are people that can afford those kind of train tickets.
And David, why are the Americans stopping this programme?
Well, the space shuttle is inherently unreliable. There have been less than 500 people in space on all in countries' methods of getting into space, Russians, Americans, Chinese, etc. And 14 people have been killed by the space shuttle. So it's not a very safe transportation system. They inherited a very grand design that the American military were involved in over 20 years ago when it was first launched. And really it's dated, and it was expected things like this would happen. The last big disaster in 2003 saw the loss of the entire 7 crew, and we were all watching the International Space Station flying over earlier this month and hoping that the space shuttle was going to be launched to chase it across the sky, but there was one delay after another due to the weather, and then they found cracks in the insulation foam on the actual fuel tank, which is what caused the 2003 disaster. So it's been pushed back to December 3rd, so they're extremely safety conscious. Who knows what'll go up on December the 3rd? We'll have to wait and see. We won't be able to see it ourselves that time because the space station won't be flying over at night. That doesn't happen until the end of December. But you can sign up to our text service if you want. You text the word space to 57003 and we'll tell you exactly when it flies up next, which we think is going to be the end of December, just after Christmas.
What goes on the International Space Station? You're saying that they carry out experiments that can't be done on Earth.
Yeah, it's the most expensive thing ever built. So why do we spend $100 billion, which used to sound like a lot of money, on a piece of hardware in space the size of a football field? And the answer is it's a laboratory. In the beginning, of course, there's also a construction site, and we have pictures of the astronauts outside doing spacewalks to install parts that are brought up by the space shuttle. Inside, you can see them floating around in weightlessness in the laboratory. So they're really construction workers. They're also laboratory technicians, and they're also guinea pigs, because a lot of the early experiments are on the astronauts. They're weightless for months on end. The typical tour of duty is 6 months. And the astronauts can lose 30% of their bone mass when they're not pounding their bones every day like we do down here on the Earth. So if you bring an astronaut back from space, you could have serious health implications. So they're studying that, the general effects of weightlessness on the human body, and developing things like there are special drugs that you can make in space. All of our computers are based on silicon. Turns out germanium crystals can be used as well, and they're 10 times faster than silicon, but they're extremely difficult to grow on the Earth. So you can do little pilot projects in space, see if they really are as good as we expect them to be, and then build massive factories down on the ground. And that's been done for drugs as well. I remember the drug interferon, which when it was first discovered was heralded as a possible cure for cancer at last. Turns out it wasn't. It helps with some cancers, but it very easy to make trial quantities at relatively low cost in space before you start building $100 billion factories on the ground again.
Now, David, tell us about Jupiter, because it's bright. It's not a star, of course, it's a planet, but it's burning like a planet.
Yeah, the best thing to see over the next couple of weeks is Jupiter. And if you go out any night, right the way through until after Christmas, you'll see this brilliant object blazing in the sky. If you've got a telescope, we've brought along one here. With this kind of telescope, you'll see its cloud belts. I think we have some pictures taken by Carl O'Byrne's. It was from Balbriggan, so these are real Irish pictures showing the cloud belts and the moons that you'll see with a telescope, even one's a bit smaller than this. And it looks very nice and inviting on those pictures and indeed on the pictures we get back from spacecraft. But it's actually an amazing world, 11 times wider than the Earth, so it's huge. The Great Red Spot spot you can see there in the cloud belts of Jupiter, that's a huge hurricane, a swirling storm that's bigger than the Earth, and it's been there for hundreds of years.
Wow.
And how come it's
I've
so
seen
bright?
it in telescopes as well. It's so bright because it's so big and it's relatively close. Relatively in astronomy, it's about 500 million kilometres. But that's close in astronomy terms.
Before we let you go, the reason the telescope is here is because there's something going on Sunday at the centre.
We're going to do more on telescopes for Christmas next time, or in 2 weeks' time. But we have workshops running to tell people how to choose a telescope and indeed how to take pictures like the ones you've seen from Ireland. It's happening on Sunday because our own shop, our telescope shop, it's the biggest in Ireland, has dealers all across the country as well. You can check it all out on the website. But if you want any one-on-one advice, you can now call the staff there 7 days a week because they're starting Sunday opening as well from this Sunday on. And if you come along on Sunday, if you're in the Dublin area, or you can make it to Dublin, then you can do a hands-on how to use a telescope like this. It's actually relatively simple once you know how, like most things. And there's always people on the end of a phone line to help you as well. And that's the message from Astronomy on this Christmas. You know, drop in and talk to us or give us a call before you buy a telescope, because helping you to use it into the future is the way to go.
Okay, thank you so much, David.
Cheers, David. Thank you. Don't forget, if you want to learn more about anything we've been discussing this morning, you can pick up a copy of this month's Astronomy and Space in all good newsagents or direct from Astronomy Ireland.